The warm May morning of 2000 began with an unusual commotion on Union Avenue, Bakersfield, California. 6 unmarked police cars quietly pulled up in front of a modest single-story house nestled in a peaceful residential neighborhood. Neighbors peered through their curtains as officers in tactical gear surrounded the entrance and took positions around the front yard. Inside, Harold Price, a 68-year-old retired electrician, was preparing his morning coffee, a habit he had maintained for years since leaving Ventura. A rapid knock on the door echoed at 6:17 a.m. Harold A. Price, Ventura County Police. "We have a warrant for your arrest in connection with the disappearance of Laura Bennett in 1975. The officers later described the old man's hands trembling slightly as he set down his coffee mug, but his face remained eerily calm, as if he had known this day would come. The day when the secret buried for 25 years finally found him. Before diving into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated on the latest cases. Santa Paula, California, 1975. The small town nestled in the Ventura Valley still carried the charm of a typical Southern California agricultural community, rows of orange trees stretching along the hillsides, low wooden houses blending into the morning mist, and a main road just wide enough for 2 lanes, leading to Highway 126. Life here unfolded quietly and predictably. Neighbors knew each other by name, and doors were often left unlocked at night. Laura Bennett, 29, was an elementary school teacher at Grant Avenue Elementary, where she had taught for 6 years. She lived with her husband, Mark Bennett, an accountant for a local transportation company. Married since 1971, they had no children and resided in a small white-painted house on the eastern edge of town. Neighbors remembered them as a calm couple, rarely arguing, often seen together at the weekend market. Laura had a habit of meticulously noting everything in her notebook: laundry schedules, library due dates, meals for the week. On Friday, September 12, 1975, she left home as she did every morning. A still warm coffee cup sat on the kitchen table while Mark reviewed their budget. He heard the engine of their blue Ford Pinto start in the driveway. She took her purse, a few checks, and a handwritten shopping list, mentioning she'd stop by the dry cleaner before picking up groceries at a roadside store. As the car turned the corner, he watched her go, unaware it would be the last time he saw her. At noon, after work, Mark stopped by an auto shop near their home, assuming his wife might be running late. By 3 o'clock, the house remained silent. He called the school where Laura worked, only to learn she had taken the day off. He then called her close friend, the community hospital, and even the grocery store she frequented, but no one knew where she was. As the last light of day faded, Mark returned home. On the kitchen table, a plate of half-eaten pastries, lowered curtains, a cold stove, and a coffee maker with lingering steam. Unease turned to fear. He grabbed a jacket, got in his car, and drove through the neighborhood streets, stopping at a gas station, asking acquaintances, then heading to the main road, connecting to the highway. Wind from the valley blew hard, kicking up thin dust in the headlights' beam. There was no trace of Laura, and no one had seen her. By nearly 9 o'clock that evening, after hours of driving around the neighborhood, Mark pulled up in front of the 2-story brick building of the Santa Paula Police Department. He walked to the front desk, still clutching his car keys, and told the officer on duty that his wife hadn't come home since morning. The air in the station was quiet, broken only by the ticking of a wall clock and the clacking of a typewriter. The officer looked up, saw the tension on the man's face, and pulled a logbook closer. He gestured for Mark to sit and began asking questions. The officer on duty recorded Mark Bennett's statement, asking briefly about the time his wife left, the vehicle description, and her daily habits. Before leaving, Mark provided his work phone number and home address, noting that Laura had never been gone for more than a few hours without letting him know. The initial report was passed to the Night Investigation Unit. Lieutenant Roy Halper, the shift supervisor, received the notification around 9:30 p.m. With over 10 years of experience, previously in property crimes, he had been reassigned to Ventura to handle missing persons cases and accidents in the area. Roy reviewed the report and asked the desk officer, "Got a vehicle description?" The officer nodded, confirming it was a blue Ford Pinto registered in Ventura County. Roy called the patrol unit, ordering a sweep along the main roads from the eastern residential area to Highway 126. A two-officer team was dispatched with Laura's description and photo provided by Mark. Meanwhile, Roy contacted the records office to verify the vehicle's registration and the victim's driving status, and he reached out to the local medical center and county hospital to check for emergency admissions. All results came back negative. By nearly 11 o'clock, the patrol unit reported back they had found a vehicle matching the description. It was parked on the shoulder of Highway 126, about 2 miles from the Bennett's neighborhood. The stretch was sparsely traveled after dusk, flanked by a dirt embankment on one side and an abandoned field on the other. The officers approached with flashlights from behind. The driver's door was ajar, unlocked, with the front seat pushed back. The keys were still in the ignition, the gear in park. The interior lights were off, but the radio was on, faintly playing a local station. On the back seat, an untouched bag of dry cleaning and the victim's leather wallet lay in the glove compartment, with cash and ID intact. They scanned the area with flashlights. No signs of a struggle, no blood, just some sand on the floor and an unfamiliar tire track parallel to the car. The officers reported the situation to Roy Halper. He drove to the scene, arriving just before midnight. Roy noted the vehicle's position, lighting conditions, weather, and distance to the nearest residential area. He ordered the radio turned off, photos taken of the entire scene, and a check to see if the car was locked from the inside. Everything suggested the car had been stopped intentionally. There were no signs of robbery or rummaged belongings. He requested a 50-meter section of the road be sealed off to preserve the scene. A quick report sent back to the station noted the vehicle was found intact, with no signs of theft or accident, and the driver was missing for unknown reasons. Based on the description and circumstances, Roy made a preliminary conclusion: this was not a voluntary disappearance. The Santa Paula police decided to maintain the scene overnight and assigned Roy Halper to lead the investigation, with an initial assessment that the victim may have encountered criminal activity on this road. The next morning, Roy Halper returned to Highway 126 with Ventura County's forensic team. The air was still misty, and the low temperature left a thin layer of dew on the road. The area around the vehicle had been cordoned off since the previous night, with warning signs placed 100 meters from either end. The forensic team began standard procedures, mapping the scene, taking panoramic and close-up photos from 3 angles. One technician used a steel ruler to measure the distance between 2 clear tire tracks on the ground. The first set belonged to the Pinto, evenly worn, while the second was larger, deeper, parallel, and stopped just over a meter away. The damp soil preserved the larger tire's tread clearly, indicating a heavier vehicle than a standard car. Roy crouched to inspect, requesting a soil sample from the tire contact point. He noted in his notebook, 2 vehicles stopped parallel, no signs of turning or skidding. Another technician found a shoe print near the road's edge, the toe facing the Pinto, about 11 inches long, likely a man's shoe. They measured, photographed, and cast it in plaster. Inside the car, gloved technicians documented the interior. The driver's seat fully reclined, gear in park, radio tuned to a local station, windows closed, but the driver's door ajar. No signs of a struggle. The steering wheel and dashboard were dust-free, with only minor smudges on the inner door handle. Under the driver's seat, a flashlight revealed a small embroidered cloth with LB in dark blue, possibly a handkerchief. Roy examined it closely, ordering it collected with tweezers and sealed in an evidence bag. Near the gear shift, a long, light brown hair was caught in a plastic crevice, collected and labeled separately. Outside the car, about half a meter from the rear door, a 20 centimeters oil stain was found. A technician noted, light yellow, faint gasoline smell. A soil sample from the spot was collected in a glass vial. The entire process took over 2 hours. Roy observed as wind from the Santa Clara River blew strongly, swirling dust and dry leaves. He knew time was short. Passing vehicles would soon erase the evidence. When finished, the Ford Pinto was towed to the Ventura Police Department's technical yard, sealed under a green tarp. All collected evidence, soil, oil, hair, handkerchief, and shoe cast, was packaged in evidence bags, labeled #42A/75. Roy reviewed his notes, cross-referencing distances and vehicle directions. No sudden brake marks or tire skids indicated the car stopped deliberately. The ajar driver's door suggested someone stepped out without locking it. No personal items were taken. The wallet and dry cleaning remained untouched. He underlined in his notebook. No signs of struggle, no evidence of force inside the car. Roy paused, gazing down the straight road toward the eastern hills. If Laura wasn't attacked in the car, only two possibilities remained. She left voluntarily for some reason, or she was persuaded or forced to exit. The second tire track and shoe print near the driver's door supported the latter theory. He wrote a brief preliminary conclusion. Likely the victim was approached intentionally. Need to identify the second vehicle. As the forensic team packed up, Roy labeled the final evidence bag, signing Halper, R. September 13, 1975. On paper, it was just procedure. For him, it was the start of a case that was no longer simply a disappearance. On the morning of September 14, 1975, the search operation began officially under Lieutenant Roy Halper's direction. The previous night's scene report showed no signs of voluntary departure, so the area around the Pinto's discovery was designated the primary search zone. Ventura Police, in coordination with county rescue units, mapped a 10-mile radius, divided into 5 sectors, along the Santa Clara River, the eucalyptus-covered hills to the east, the lowlands near the highway, the Santa Paula residential outskirts, and the old Ventura Power Company electrical site. From early morning, 2 Bell 206 helicopters conducted aerial sweeps with optical cameras to scan the low hills and riverbed. On the ground, 3 canine units were led along Highway 126, starting from the vehicle's location. The wind blew against them, carrying the faint gasoline smell from the previous day's soil sample. Roy joined a group of 6 officers, equipped with a map and radio, marking suspicious spots with white-painted wooden stakes. The Santa Clara River area had complex terrain, with dense reeds and old gravel beds. They found old tire tracks leading to the water's edge, but none were recent. The second team searched the eucalyptus forest, where dry leaves covered soft soil, but found no signs of a struggle or dragging. By noon, the teams reported nothing significant found. Roy ordered the search radius extended 2 miles west, toward a service road leading to a small electrical substation used by the local company. It was a low-traffic area, typically visited only by maintenance workers. There, the team found faded truck tire tracks, likely from equipment deliveries weeks earlier. A technician spotted a muddy scrap of paper near a metal fence. When picked up, it showed faint, smudged ink, possibly part of a shopping list. Roy had it sealed in an evidence bag, labeled "Collected at Electrical Site, 1.2 miles from vehicle." In a brief afternoon meeting, he assessed, if Laura left the car at the scene, she might have headed west or been taken to this area. However, there were no fresh skid marks, no new shoe prints, and the dog showed no response. That day, 52 people, police, firefighters, and volunteers, searched in 3 shifts. The helicopters made a final sweep as dusk fell over the eucalyptus fields. From above, the area was just patches of open land and faint trails, with no unusual objects. Roy logged the results: victim not found. No new evidence. Continue verifying witnesses and unidentified vehicles. As the teams packed up, a middle-aged man approached the perimeter, introducing himself as a worker from a nearby auto shop. He said that on Friday morning, while delivering goods to the highway, he saw a gray GMC truck parked not far from the Pinto's location. He remembered it because the driver wore dark blue coveralls, had a stocky build, thinning gray hair, and the truck lacked a company logo. Roy questioned him closely about the truck's direction, The man pointed north, toward the electrical site. The statement was recorded on site, with a hand-drawn sketch of the truck's position relative to the Pinto. As night fell, Roy ended the first day's work. He knew most missing persons cases grew hopeless after 48 hours. But the detail about the gray GMC truck opened a new lead. In the day's final report, typed on a typewriter, the last note read, "Independent witness confirms gray GMC truck near scene, needs tracking." At the morning meeting at the Ventura Police Department, Lieutenant Roy Halper presented the search results and proposed expanding the investigation to focus on the gray GMC truck mentioned by the witness. He requested the administrative unit to retrieve a list of all gray GMC vehicles registered in Ventura County, including both commercial and personal vehicles. By late morning, a list of 37 owners was printed, complete with addresses, occupations, and registration statuses. Roy highlighted those living near Santa Paula and those working in technical fields, as they were most likely to have been in the vicinity of the electrical site near the crime scene. One name caught his attention: Harold Price, 43, a freelance electrician living in suburban Ventura, less than 10 miles from the victim's home. According to records, Price had worked short-term contracts with a local power company, the same company that owned the electrical site, searched the previous day. Roy requested a background check. Price had been detained in 1968 for assault following a bar fight, but the case was dropped when the victim withdrew the complaint. Otherwise, he had no other criminal record, no civil lawsuits, or serious traffic violations. That afternoon, Roy and another officer visited Price's home on Telegraph Road. The small wooden house stood isolated, its front yard cluttered with mechanical tools, coils of electrical wire, and old paint cans. When they knocked, Price appeared, a tall, stocky man with graying hair, wearing a gray jumpsuit. Roy showed his badge and explained the investigation. Price spoke calmly, stating he was home fixing a generator on Friday morning and hadn't left the neighborhood. When asked for an alibi, Price shook his head, saying he lived alone and his neighbors were at work all day. Regarding the GMC, he confirmed he'd bought a used one in 1973. Still using it to haul work tools, and its license plate matched the DMV records. Roy asked to see the vehicle. Price led them to the back, where a silver-gray GMC truck was parked under a tin roof. The truck bed held electrical tools, cables, screw boxes, and a 5-gallon oil can. The bed's floor had gasoline stains, oil patches, and a few gray rags used for cleaning machinery. Everything appeared consistent with a typical work vehicle. Roy took notes, observing the tires. Their tread pattern resembled the tracks found at the scene, though a visual match wasn't conclusive. He asked if Price had driven on Highway 126 that morning. Price replied, "Not at all," claiming the truck had a faulty spark plug awaiting replacement. However, Roy noticed the engine felt slightly warm, suggesting recent use. He didn't comment, only requesting photos of the truck and its VIN recorded. Before leaving, Roy asked about Price's work. Price said he'd ended his contract with the power company earlier that month and wasn't currently on any projects. After leaving, Roy cross-checked with Ventura Power's HR department. Their report confirmed Harold Price had worked at the Santa Paula site during the first week of September, ending on the 11th. One day before Laura Bennett's disappearance, Roy noted, suspect was at the area near the time of disappearance. Owns a vehicle matching witness description, alibi unverified. He requested the forensic team to collect tire impressions from Price's GMC for comparison with the scene's tracks, and to sample oil from the truck bed for lab analysis. Initial results showed the oil matched the type found at the scene, but couldn't confirm an exact match. No blood, hair, or other suspicious items were found in the truck. By day's end, Roy summarized, Harold Price was the only one of the 37 owners with geographic, temporal, and descriptive connections. However, all evidence was circumstantial. No witness confirmed seeing him with Laura, and no physical evidence directly implicated him. Roy's temporary conclusion: insufficient grounds for detention. Place Harold Price under priority surveillance. In the department's case file, Price's name was marked in red ink, with a brief note. Potential suspect, gray GMC, electrician, Ventura. 3 days after inspecting Harold Price's vehicle, Lieutenant Roy Halper returned to the records room to compile all data on Laura Bennett's movements the morning she vanished. The goal was to pinpoint the last confirmed sighting and calculate the gap before her Ford Pinto was found. He spread a large Santa Paula map on the table, marking key locations: the Bennett's home in the eastern residential area, Pacific Cleaners, dry cleaner on Main Street, Henderson's Grocery at the Grant Street corner, and the vehicle's discovery site on Highway 126. A receipt from the dry cleaner confirmed Laura paid in cash around 9:10 a.m., as printed on the slip. The clerk verified she was alone, wearing a green dress, had a brief conversation, and showed no unusual behavior. The drive from the dry cleaner to the Pinto's location took less than 10 minutes via the direct route. However, the car was found facing the opposite direction, suggesting she turned around or took a side road before stopping. Another witness, the owner of Henderson's Grocery, vaguely recalled seeing a blue car parked on the roadside that morning, but wasn't sure whose it was due to the busy market. He added that a gray truck passed by at the time. Roy noted, matches first witness's description, gray GMC. He compared timelines. Laura left the dry cleaner at 9:10, and by 9:35 or 9:40, a witness saw the Pinto on the highway's shoulder, leaving a 25-30 minute unexplained gap. There was no evidence she stopped elsewhere or met anyone. This gap became the investigation's focus. Roy and another officer test drove the route, timing each segment. The dry cleaner to the highway took 8 minutes, with no major intersections causing delays. They noted a key detail near the car's discovery site was a small turnoff to the old electrical site where Harold Price had worked. This road was obscure, known only to locals or technical workers. Roy stopped there, observing the wind direction and road surface, marking the spot in red on the map. He reasoned that if Laura was stopped or lured, this intersection was the most likely spot. Another vehicle could have driven alongside, overtaken, and pulled close to the Pinto's left side. The scene report confirmed the second tire track was very close to the left edge, with no sudden brake marks, ruling out a collision or forced roadblock. Roy wrote in his analysis, second vehicle stopped parallel, no pressure. Victim may have stopped voluntarily. This implied the other driver was someone she trusted or had a plausible reason to make her lower her window or open her door. Reviewing Laura's professional records, Roy confirmed she had no connections to technical or construction workers. However, neighbors mentioned that weeks earlier, a Ventura Power electrical crew, including some who interacted with residents to check lines, worked near the Bennett's home. Harold Price's name appeared on that crew list. Based on this, Roy hypothesized Laura likely stopped her car, trusting the approaching person was a utility worker. He outlined 2 scenarios: she was called out to talk or coerced under a technical pretext. The 25-minute window between leaving the dry cleaner and the car's last sighting allowed enough time for an approach, brief exchange, and movement to the highway where the Pinto was abandoned. In an afternoon internal meeting, Roy presented the route analysis, highlighting the link between the car's location and the electrical site. He concluded, if the victim was lured to stop, the person likely knew the area and her usual route. The individual may have worked near her home or the site. The final note in the route analysis report, typed concisely, read, estimated disappearance window, 9:15, 9:40 a.m. Suspect likely someone known or posing as a utility worker. To strengthen the investigation, Lieutenant Roy Halper ordered a review of everyone who might have passed through the Highway 126 area on the morning of September 12th. Police sent notices to shops, gas stations, and homes along the route, asking for information about a blue Ford Pinto or a gray GMC truck. Among the first to respond was the owner of Miller's Gas and Service, located over a mile and a half west of the scene. Miller, who had worked there for nearly 30 years, said that around 9 a.m. that morning, he saw a middle-aged man in a gray jumpsuit stop a truck on the roadside, not far from his station. He noticed, because the truck lacked a company logo, and the driver didn't buy gas, only stood outside, seemingly scanning the road. When asked for a description, Miller recalled the man as tall, stocky, with patchy gray hair, walking slowly, like he was looking for something on the ground. He added that minutes later, the truck left eastward toward Santa Paula. Roy recorded the statement, noting its alignment with Harold Price's description, same age, build, and work attire. For cross-verification, he sent 2 officers to find additional witnesses near a high school a few hundred meters away. 2 16-year-old students reported that, while biking to the main road that morning, they saw a gray-haired man standing near a small blue car, apparently talking to someone inside. One student noted the man was tall, wearing a gray jumpsuit, like a worker, and later saw a truck parked parallel. They didn't catch the license plate, only recalling the silver-gray color. When Roy asked about the time, both confirmed it was around 9:35 a.m. This matched the timeline gap in Laura's route. He asked them to describe the man's face in detail for a police sketch artist. The initial sketch depicted a square-faced man with high cheekbones, graying hair, a broad forehead, a slightly crooked nose, and deep wrinkles around the mouth. Roy compared it to Harold Price's 1968 Ventura Police file photo. The facial shape and hairline were nearly identical. When shown the sketch, the witnesses agreed it was about 80% similar. For objectivity, Roy sent the sketch to Ventura Power, where Price had worked. The HR department noted the figure resembled a former employee, Harold Price, who ended his contract in early September. The Santa Paula site manager confirmed Price worked morning shifts, was at the highway area, often wore a gray jumpsuit, and drove a silver GMC. This was documented in the company's internal technical report, aligning with Laura Bennett's disappearance date. Roy compiled all statements, the sketch, and HR records into a dedicated file. He reviewed each page, cross-referencing details, truck color, clothing, build, time, and location, all matched. 3 independent witnesses, the gas station owner, the 2 students, and the site manager, described a middle-aged, gray-haired man in a gray work outfit near the highway at the same time. This convergence made Harold Price the investigation's focal point. In the typed summary report, dated September 18, 1975, Roy's final conclusion read, "Witness descriptions match Harold Price's characteristics. Suspect likely approached victim on Highway 126. Confirmed alignment between witness identifications and suspect's profile." On September 19, 1975, after compiling all witness statements and the suspect sketch, Lieutenant Roy Halper submitted a request for a search warrant for Harold Price's home. The request cited, the suspect owned a vehicle matching the type and color seen at the scene, had a prior assault record, and had worked near the victim's disappearance site. By late morning, the Ventura County Court approved the warrant. Roy, accompanied by 2 detectives and a forensic technician, arrived at 1342 Telegraph Road, where Price lived alone. The small tin-roofed house had a cluttered front yard with wires, paint cans, and scattered tools. As the police vehicles stopped at the gate, Price was on the porch, holding a newspaper. He showed no surprise, only asking, "You here to see the truck again?" Roy presented the warrant and requested cooperation. Price nodded, walking slowly inside, remaining calm. The police split into 2 teams. One searched the house, the other the rear garage. The house had 2 small rooms with old furniture, no signs of a struggle or hasty cleanup. In the garage, under a tin roof, the team noted a strong gasoline smell. On the concrete floor was a partially used 5-gallon gas can, next to a toolbox with wrenches, screwdrivers, pliers, and oil-stained rags. Roy ordered photos and numbered odometer number for each item. In a corner of the garage, a wooden crate held a small dark green cloth with dried oil, sealed in an evidence bag. A technician using a flashlight found a long light brown hair caught on the driver's seat edge in the nearby GMC truck, distinct from Price's hair. It was collected carefully with tweezers, placed in a glass vial, and labeled. All evidence was numbered 1 to 7, with locations meticulously recorded. During the search, Roy observed Price's demeanor. He remained composed, occasionally smoking, answering questions briefly. When asked again about the morning of September 12th, he repeated his earlier statement. He was home fixing a generator, didn't leave. Roy asked if anyone could confirm. Price replied, "No one, neighbors were at work." His fluent responses, showing no tension, heightened Roy's caution. After 2 hours, the search concluded. The scene report listed a plastic gas can, an oil-stained toolbox, 3 gray cleaning rags, 1 green cloth, 1 long hair, and oil samples from the garage floor. No victim's personal items were found. The GMC was re-inspected, with tire and soil samples taken from the rear wheels for comparison with scene evidence. That afternoon, all evidence was sent to Ventura's forensic lab. However, 1975's biological analysis technology was limited. The lab report, returned 2 days later, stated, insufficient chemical markers to identify hair source, oil matches common commercial type, no blood or fabric consistent with victim's clothing. This meant no direct evidence linked Harold Price to the disappearance. Roy read the results silently. He knew physical evidence wouldn't advance the case further at this stage. Still, he noted carefully, gasoline smell in garage notable. Oil similar to scene, cooperative, but unnatural behavior. When summoned for additional questioning, Price arrived on time, calm, without requesting a lawyer. He answered briefly, not deviating from his initial statement. At the session's end, Roy could only thank him and let him go. In the day's final typed report, he wrote, "No definitive physical evidence. Suspect cooperative, denies involvement. Case paused at suspicion level, monitoring continues." The final line, typed with Roy Halper's signature, confirmed the investigation's temporary conclusion. In late September 1975, with lab results showing no direct evidence, Lieutenant Roy Halper decided to launch a supplemental search phase. The goal was to verify whether any evidence or traces had been overlooked in the area around the electrical site, the last place Laura Bennett might have been. A new search plan was approved, expanding the radius to 15 miles from the Ford Pinto's discovery site. The search team included 12 officers, 4 rescue personnel, and 1 forensic technician. The area was divided into 3 main sectors along the Santa Clara River, the eastern Eucalyptus Hills, and the decommissioned Ventura Power Company electrical site. At the river, water levels had receded after dry days, exposing dark mud and small trails. Handlers with tracking dogs scoured the area, but no signals were detected. In the hills, only old pits and dry gullies, likely from past rains, were found. By noon, the third team entered the electrical site where Harold Price had worked. Spanning nearly 3 acres, it was enclosed by rusted metal fencing, with abandoned wooden sheds and disconnected power poles inside. On the cracked concrete floor, the team found a blackened drum against the northern wall. The drum, about half a meter in diameter, bore soot marks and a heavy smoke odor. Roy inspected it personally, requesting the technician to open the lid and collect ash samples. The ash, when sifted, contained small metal fragments, likely nails and copper wire scraps. No bones, hair, or human tissue were present. A mobile lab unit's preliminary analysis indicated the ash was industrial, possibly from burned electrical materials or cables. The drum's base had dried resin droplets, suggesting it had been used to burn scrap. Still, Roy ordered all samples collected and sealed in evidence bags. Nearby, a rescue team member noticed disturbed soil, seemingly dug up weeks earlier. The team probed with iron rods, but hit only hard dirt and rock fragments. No organic material was detected. In the afternoon, they continued sweeping along the outer fence and old power poles, but results were the same. No signs of a struggle, no personal items, no blood. Roy noted in his field log, no clear criminal evidence, disturbed soil possibly from construction. As the sun set, the teams withdrew. The day's summary showed that, aside from the burned drum with industrial ash, no new investigative leads were found. The report, sent to Ventura Station that night, confirmed the search area had been maximally expanded, given available conditions. Roy reviewed the summary, marking the final lines. He knew too much time had passed, and each day without results diminished the chances of finding Laura. At the next morning's meeting, participating units agreed there was no basis for further expansion, as the surrounding area was mostly farmland and sparse forest, too vast for aimless searches. Roy acknowledged the input, concluding temporarily that all measures had been fully implemented. All evidence was stored in Ventura's evidence locker under the case's secondary code hash, VC 75214. Finally, alone in his office, Roy reviewed all photos, maps, and technical reports. Every lead pointed to one thing: a middle-aged man with a gray truck, present at the same time, but no physical evidence proved criminal action. Roy closed the case file, signing the final report for the supplemental search phase. On the typed paper, the conclusion read clearly: no body or new evidence found. Investigation currently lacks viable leads. Status: stalled. By late December 1975, 3 months after Laura Bennett's disappearance, the investigation was officially deemed a dead end. Search operations had concluded, remaining samples yielded no promising results, and no new witnesses emerged. The Ventura County Prosecutor's Office agreed there was insufficient evidence for criminal charges, as no direct proof of a crime existed, and no body was found. In the summary report, drafted by Lieutenant Roy Halper, the case was classified as missing presumed dead under state regulations, meaning missing and presumed deceased when survival was no longer likely. The case was officially coded #VC 75214, comprising 57 pages of reports, scene photos, witness statements, lab results, and investigator notes. All evidence, from the hair, the LB embroidered handkerchief, to soil samples and the burned drum, was resealed in waxed paper bags, stamped with Ventura Police Department's verification, and transferred to the county's storage facility. On the case file cover, Roy wrote in blue ink, "Laura Bennett, missing person September 12, 1975, status unresolved." The final pages, an investigation assessment report, concluded that insufficient elements to establish a crime, no specific criminal basis identified. Roy's personal note, tucked separately in the file, had one brief line: Price, primary suspect. It served as a reminder for anyone reopening the case that one individual remained noteworthy, though nothing could be proven then. The Bennett case was listed among Ventura County's unresolved missing persons cases, alongside over 40 others awaiting new information. The final report was sent to the prosecutor's office, with no further action recommended. In the weeks before the holidays, Roy completed administrative tasks, handing the file to the archives unit. He stood in the cold storage room, where hundreds of case files stacked on iron shelves, each labeled with a year and code, all gathering dust. File hash VC 75214 was placed on the third shelf, between two 1974 missing persons cases. Roy applied the final seal, signed, and closed the metal cabinet. The metallic clang echoed in the empty room, marking the end of 3 months of an unsolved investigation. The final summary sent to headquarters stated, "Case hash VC 75214, status, cold case." From that point, Laura Bennett's disappearance was officially a cold case, with no active investigation ongoing. Time passed quietly. After file hash VC 75214 was archived, Laura Bennett's name faded from mention, save for a few local articles, soon overshadowed by newer news. Lieutenant Roy Halper continued working at Ventura Police Department for nearly a decade. He handled many cases, but passing the storage room, his gaze lingered on the 1975 labeled cabinets. In spring 1984, he applied for retirement after 26 years of service. During his final handover, Roy instructed the records officer to preserve the Bennett case file, not destroying it under the standard 5-year cycle for missing persons cases. The file, with all sealed evidence, was moved to the county's central storage. He left the force with a sense of incompletion, carrying the memory of Highway 126 and the blue Pinto under the yellow glow of that night's patrol lights. Around the same time, Harold Price left Ventura. Tax records showed he sold his Telegraph Road house and moved to Bakersfield, nearly 100 miles north. His freelance electrician work allowed easy relocation with few traces. By the late 1980s, Ventura's periodic checks found no sign of him in the area. In the list of potential suspects, the note "Price needs monitoring" was gradually buried under newer files. The 1990s marked changes in California's investigative methods. Biological trace identification, particularly DNA testing, began being applied to serious criminal cases. By 1999, the state launched a program to digitize old case files across counties for electronic storage and re-examination of preserved evidence. Ventura's storage held over 8,000 cases from the 1950s to 1980s. During a year-end inventory, a technician noted that evidence bag hash 42A/75 Bennett case remained intact. Inside were the LB embroidered handkerchief and a small vial with the hair from the Pinto's seat. The waxed paper seal was unbroken, with Roy Halper's faded but legible signature. The inventory log noted, "Evidence well preserved, dry conditions, no signs of damage." Unlike many cases where samples had degraded or been lost to mold, bag hash 42A/75's condition was rare. Ventura lacked its own DNA lab then, but information about the state's cold case support program was circulating. When the evidence list reached Sacramento's central facility, the brief description embroidered victim-named handkerchief with hair sample was marked in red, with an added note, "Potential for biological testing." Nearly 25 years after the case closed, those pieces of evidence endured, as if awaiting a time when science could reveal what 1975's police could not. In January 2000, California's Department of Justice launched the Cold Case Initiative, a statewide project to review and retest preserved biological evidence from unresolved cases between 1960 and 1985. It focused on cases where forensic technology of the time couldn't analyze samples like hair, blood, or soft tissue collected at scenes. Ventura Police Department, storing thousands of unsolved cases, was selected as an initial pilot site. A team of young forensic technicians was tasked with inventorying and assessing remaining evidence. Among them was Ava Moreno, 27, a molecular biology graduate from the University of California, who joined the cold case unit less than 2 years prior. Her job was to review old sealed bags, identifying samples viable for STR DNA testing, a new method then capable of analyzing minute traces. In early February, while inspecting Ventura's evidence storage, Ava spotted case code hash 42A/75 in the 1999 inventory list. The brief note read, "Embroidered victim-named handkerchief, hair, Bennett case, 1975. She opened the tin box containing the file, finding the waxed paper evidence bag, Roy Halper's signature faded but intact. The bag was aged, its edges slightly yellowed, but the seal held firm. Attached was a typed note, "Hair sample from driver's seat, Pinto, source unidentified." It bore Roy Halper's signature, dated September 13, 1975. Ava studied the description, recognizing it as one of the few cases with evidence intact after over 20 years. She requested permission to test the sample. Once approved, Ava and another technician followed forensic protocol, photographing the bag, noting the date and time, cutting a small edge, removing the hair from its glass vial with sterile tweezers, and resealing immediately. The hair was placed in a nitrogen-filled tube and sent to Sacramento's central lab for STR testing under the cold case program. While awaiting results, Ava reviewed the original Bennett case file. The paper stack, nearly 3 inches thick, was still coded #VC70-5214. She read every page: missing person report, scene logs, Pinto photos, highway maps, and witness statements. On the final page, she found Roy Halper's handwritten note. Price, primary suspect. The brief line, alone on the page, made her pause. Ava checked with the old HR department, learning Roy had long retired and lived in Ventura's suburbs. She noted this, planning to contact him if the test results proved significant. In an internal report to the Cold Case Division, Ava proposed classifying the Bennett case as Priority B cases with viable biological samples and a previously identified but unprosecuted suspect. The proposal was approved within a week. The hair, coded SAC 2000-1432, entered the STR analysis system, cross-referenced with California's CODIS database. Results were expected in 4 to 6 weeks. Meanwhile, Ava completed administrative tasks, backing up evidence photos, sampling logs, and storage records to ensure procedural validity if the results were incriminating. On March 20th, Sacramento's lab sent Ventura a progress report confirming that sample #42A/75 had been successfully DNA extracted. The technical note stated, "Sample in good condition, sufficient nuclear DNA for STR analysis, CODIS matching in progress." This was Ventura's first case with a sample over 20 years old, analyzed via modern technology. For Ava, it was not just a scientific breakthrough, but a real possibility. If the DNA matched a known profile, the Bennett case could reopen after nearly a quarter century. She submitted a memo to Ventura's cold case program lead, with the final line typed in bold, "Sample #42A/75, viable for STR analysis. Bennett case, 1975, confirmed as having potential for reinvestigation." With that report, the forgotten 25-year-old case entered a new phase, modern forensic investigation. In early April 2000, Sacramento's lab sent Ventura the official analysis results for sample SAC 2000-1432. The 8-page report detailed technical specifications, concluding with the DNA match. Page 7's bolded line read, "Hair sample from evidence #42A/75 matches the DNA profile of Harold A. Price, born 1932, stored in CODIS since 1985. Random match probability, 1 in 1.2 billion. Ava Moreno reread it multiple times to ensure accuracy. She drafted an urgent email to the cold case unit lead, requesting cross-verification with Bakersfield Police to confirm Price's DNA profile. By afternoon, the cross-check confirmed complete accuracy. The man, once the primary suspect in the 1975 file, matched the hair found in Laura Bennett's car. After 25 years, the first piece of evidence had emerged. Ava printed the full results, attached them to a copy of the original Bennett case file, and immediately contacted the Ventura Police Department to present the findings. The current lieutenant in charge reviewed the report and authorized her to work directly with the case's original investigator, Lieutenant Roy Halper, now retired. Personnel records showed he lived in southern Ventura, in a small house near the coast. Ava drove there the next morning, carrying a file over 2 inches thick and a copy of the latest DNA report. Roy, now over 70, with white hair and a lean frame, remained sharp. Upon hearing the case name, he paused, then said, "I still remember, that girl went missing in September. We never found anything strong enough to pin Price." Ava placed the file on the wooden table, opening to the DNA results page and pointing to the conclusion line. Roy read slowly, his eyes fixed on the match probability figure. A long silence followed. Finally, he said softly, "So we've got it at last." They spent the morning reviewing the 1975 case file. Roy helped Ava decipher abbreviations, handwritten notes, and precise scene locations, details hard for someone not involved in the original investigation to fully grasp. He recalled each witness vividly: Miller, the gas station owner, the 2 high school students, and the Ventura power site manager, who confirmed Harold Price's presence that day. Ava marked each name in the file copy, compiling a comprehensive evidence timeline. The new DNA evidence established the first physical link between Price and the victim's car, something 1975's police couldn't prove. She noted in her internal report, DNA confirms physical contact between suspect and victim's vehicle. Scientific evidence supports investigator Halper's initial assessment. Roy shared additional information not in the official file. After the case was suspended, he kept tabs on Price. In 1980, he heard Price had moved away, but was never arrested or linked to major incidents. Learning Price was detained for assault in Bakersfield in 1985, Roy realized that's why his DNA was in the database, something he couldn't have anticipated then. Ava requested Ventura Police to verify Price's current address. That same day, records confirmed he still lived in Bakersfield, working part-time at a residential electrical repair garage. She promptly drafted a proposal to reopen the Bennett case, citing the DNA results and original witness statements. The following week, the Ventura County Prosecutor's Office approved the request, officially reopening case hash VC 75214. A task force was formed, including cold case unit representatives, Sacramento's forensic team, and 2 active Ventura investigators. Ava was assigned to handle forensics and data analysis, while Roy, though retired, was invited as a specialist consultant due to his deep case knowledge. He agreed without hesitation. Together, they drafted a reinvestigation plan, starting with re-verifying 1975 witness statements, cross-checking the electrical site's location, and assessing potential overlooked evidence. That afternoon, in the cold case unit office, Ava printed a 30-plus page plan and placed it on the director's desk. The first page's title read clearly, Case Hash VC 75214, reopened April 2000. Investigator Ava Moreno. Consultant, Lieutenant Roy Halper. Primary suspect, Harold A. Price. The approval was signed that day. After 25 years since Laura Bennett's disappearance, the case was reactivated, this time with undeniable scientific evidence. In April 2000, a week after the Bennett case was officially reopened, Ava Moreno and Lieutenant Roy Halper began reviewing the old crime scene. 25 years had passed, but Roy vividly recalled every detail of Highway 126, where the Ford Pinto was found. As they drove there, the scene had transformed. The road was widened, flanked by industrial warehouses and material yards. The once open field was fenced off, containing abandoned tin buildings with a faded Ventura Power Substation 3 sign. Roy stopped on the shoulder, peering through the rusted fence, and said slowly, "This was the power company's site. Price worked here." Ava noted this, activating a GPS to mark coordinates. She wanted to pinpoint the Pinto's discovery spot relative to the current site. Using the 1975 topographic map from the file, they estimated the Pinto was less than 400 meters from the old substation's gate. The site's connection to Price's employer caught Ava's attention. The next day, she visited Ventura's planning department to review Ventura Power Company's old construction records. On microfilm, she found a detailed 1975 site blueprint, including underground electrical conduits and a 3-meter-deep technical pit near the northern wall. Notes indicated the pit was filled during a 1978 renovation after equipment was relocated. Ava copied the blueprint and showed it to Roy. He pointed to the pit's location. If you wanted to hide something no one would find, this was the perfect spot. Back when I investigated, this area wasn't fully fenced, and Price had site access. To verify, they planned a field survey. Ventura Police granted temporary access to the cold case team. On the morning of April 17th, Ava, Roy, and 2 forensic technicians entered through the rusted iron gate, equipped with GPS cameras and a GPR ground scanner. The old warehouse was silent, its concrete floor stained, with lingering smells of old metal and machine oil. They measured according to the map, orienting north-south to locate the filled pit. As the GPR scanner operated, its screen showed faint subsurface wave reflections. At about 2.5 meters deep, a signal indicated an irregular structure, roughly 2 square meters. The technician marked the area with white paint, noting depth 2.4 m, possible compacted soil. Ava photographed the scene, sending data to the cold case unit for further analysis. A preliminary report confirmed the area had been dug and refilled, with an undetermined time frame but consistent with late 1970s renovations. Notably, the upper soil layer contained ash and industrial sand, materials often used for temporary backfill after equipment removal. The ash reminded Roy of the burned drum found at the site in 1975. He told Ava, "If I'm right, someone might have used ash from that drum to cover something else." Ava nodded, noting in the log, excavation needed to identify ash source and check for organic material. On April 20th, Ava drafted an excavation request to the Ventura County Prosecutor's Office, citing the legal basis, new DNA evidence linking Harold Price to the victim and GPR data showing anomalies at the site where Price worked. The request was approved within 48 hours. Ventura Police assigned 2 additional forensic staff and a criminal archaeologist. On the morning of April 24th, as the sun rose, the excavation team arrived. The marked area was cordoned with temporary fencing, tarps laid out for soil samples. Ava stood beside Roy, reading the excavation permit aloud before starting. The old concrete was cut with machines, revealing the soil beneath. After half a meter of industrial sand, the soil darkened noticeably, drier than surrounding areas. Technicians sampled it for mobile lab analysis of ash and organic content. As digging deepened, small metal fragments, partially burned copper wires, and a faint gasoline smell emerged. All were collected, numbered, and sealed. After nearly 3 hours, a technician called Ava to view the handheld scanner's screen. It showed a large, irregular reflection at 2.6 meters, unmatched by any blueprint. Ava and Roy exchanged looks, knowing they'd found the focal point. Roy scribbled, "North corner, dense, curved reflection signal. Possible buried object under ash layer." Ava ordered a pause in deep digging, photographing and mapping coordinates, then requested full excavation approval for the next day. Ava's end-of-day report to the cold case unit stated, Highway 126 survey, identified anomaly at Old Ventura Power Site, depth 2.4, 2.6 mem, with ash and burned gasoline traces. Preliminary conclusion, suspected location potentially tied to body concealment. This discovery, after over 25 years, gave the Bennett investigation its first specific coordinate, a possible final answer to the 1975 disappearance. On April 25, 2000, Ventura's forensic team began full excavation at the old Ventura Power Company site. Overcast skies and a light western breeze carried the smell of rusted dust and old machine oil through the abandoned warehouses. Ava Moreno arrived early with Lieutenant Roy Halper, observing as a small excavator cleared the topsoil from the marked area. The process was meticulous, digging in layers, pausing at soil color changes. Forensic technicians logged continuously, measuring depths and photographing each stage. At about 2 meters, the soil turned dark gray, mixed with ash fragments. A faint gasoline smell rose with each scoop. Ava halted the machine, switching to manual digging with small shovels and steel trowels to preserve evidence structure. At a further few centimeters, a technician shouted, "Metal object." Everyone stopped. A deformed steel drum lid, seemingly burned, emerged in the ash-sand mix. Below it, the soil was reddish-brown, with partially burned fabric fragments. The area was marked, photographed, and expanded half a meter on each side. At an additional 15 centimeters, small bone fragments appeared, first an arm bone, then pelvic and rib pieces. Roy stood silent. Ava whispered, "Call the mobile forensic team to the scene." The pit was widened to recover all remains. The skeleton was incomplete. Bones were scattered in the ash layer, many charred, indicating high heat exposure. While clearing soil around the wrist bones, a technician found a thin silver bracelet, plain, with LB engraved inside. Ava, gloved, lifted it with tweezers, examined it under a magnifying glass, and placed it in a sample box. Under dim light, the engraving was clear. She noted, evidence 15, a silver bracelet, engraved LB, found on left wrist of remains. Elsewhere, the forensic team recovered a small dark green fabric piece, matching the material of the Pinto's handkerchief. The surrounding area was cordoned, photographed panoramically, and bones were moved to specialized nylon bags. After the pit was fully excavated, fire department staff used a gas vapor detector, finding above-average hydrocarbon levels in the air. Soil samples from 3 depths were collected for analysis, along with the burned drum fragments and fluid-stained fabric. All were numbered, sealed, and sent to Ventura's lab. Ava stood at the pit's edge, watching evidence bags being lifted. For her, this moment was both a conclusion and the start of final proof, identifying the victim and linking directly to Harold Price. 3 days later, Ventura County's forensic lab completed a preliminary report. Analysis confirmed the bones belonged to an adult female, approximately 1.65 meters tall, with an estimated death between 1974-1976. Rib and arm bones showed perimortem fractures, consistent with blunt force or strangulation. Radiocarbon in surrounding soil matched the mid-1970s. The report concluded, bone structure, size, and personalized silver bracelet align with Laura Bennett's identity. The chemical lab separately analyzed the pit's soil and ash. The ash contained high hydrocarbon and lead additive residues, common in 1970s industrial gasoline for generators. Compared to the 1975 oil sample from Harold Price's garage, stored in evidence, the chemical composition was nearly identical. The chemist's report stated, hydrocarbon sample in soil matches chromatographic profile of 1975, Ventura power oil sample. Likelihood of same source exceeds 98%. Ava reviewed the results in the cold case unit's small meeting room, placing 3 reports side by side, bone analysis, chemical analysis, and the LB bracelet images. All pointed to one conclusion: Laura Bennett was murdered, her body partially burned with industrial gasoline and buried at a site accessible to Harold Price. She called Roy at home, reading the results briefly. On the other end, he replied, so she was there. The next day, the forensic team held an internal briefing at Ventura Station. Ava presented the evidence chain chronologically, DNA matching Price, the GPR detected anomaly, and the excavation uncovering remains with burned gasoline traces. Her summary report ended, forensic results confirm Laura Bennett's murder, burial site directly linked to suspect Harold A. Price. As the meeting ended, Ava gathered her papers and stepped out of the room. In the hallway, Roy waited, holding an old photo of the 1975 Pinto crime scene. He slipped the photo into the new case file, whispering, 25 years later, we've finally put her in the right place in the records, no longer a missing person, but a victim. Ava nodded, glancing through the window, where afternoon sunlight bathed the trees. For them, the Bennett case was no longer a mystery, but a proven crime with evidence. After the forensic findings were confirmed, Ava Moreno shifted to building the prosecution case. Her immediate goal was to establish a clear link between Harold Price and the body's discovery site, sufficient for a criminal arrest warrant. She began by reviewing Price's work records from his time at Ventura Power Company. The HR department had old-time sheets on microfilm detailing each employee's 1975 shifts. Checking September, Ava found Harold Price took 3 consecutive days off, starting September 12th, the day Laura Bennett vanished, returning on the 15th. The reason listed was simply funeral leave. No evidence suggested he attended any funeral. Ava contacted the retired HR manager from that period, but the leave form bore only Price's signature, unverified by a supervisor, an anomaly, as employees couldn't self-approve leave. She labeled this document Evidence B12 in the prosecution file. Next, Ava cross-referenced Ventura Power's site data for that week. 1975 technical reports showed Price's crew worked at Substation 3, the exact location of the body's discovery. In the site log, Price was listed as a maintenance technician on September 11th, tasked with checking northern area lines. The next day's completed entry was blank, with no sign-off. Meanwhile, the company's vehicle log noted a gray GMC truck, matching Price's license plate, was checked out from the depot at 8 a.m. on September 12th and not returned until the next evening. A handwritten note in the log read, "Delayed, equipment cleaning." Ava compared this to Price's 1975 statement claiming he stayed home all day. The company's internal records directly contradicted his alibi. She compiled all data, leave form, site log, vehicle log, and DNA results, and presented them to the Ventura County Prosecutor's Office. A closed-door meeting was held on the afternoon of May 2nd, attended by police representatives, prosecutors, and consultant Roy Halper. Ava laid out the evidence step by step: DNA-matched hair, physical evidence, Price's presence at Substation 3, and timelines. Displaying a map on the screen, the timestamps aligned perfectly with Laura Bennett's movements on the morning of September 12, 1975. She concluded he was the only one with site access, owned a vehicle matching witness descriptions, took unverified leave the day the victim disappeared, and his DNA was found in her car. No one in the room objected. Ventura's lead prosecutor confirmed the evidence met the probable cause threshold for charges. The case was sent to a county judge to request a formal arrest warrant. In the request, Ava cited the proposed charge, homicide, second-degree penal code 187, as supported by the DNA report, forensic findings, work records, and witness statements. 2 days later, on the morning of May 4th, the Ventura County Court approved the arrest warrant for Harold A. Price, born 1932, residing in Bakersfield, California. The warrant, numbered W00519, was valid statewide. Ventura Police coordinated with Bakersfield Police to plan the arrest. Before leaving the office, Ava reviewed every document in the original file, stamping "active case" on the cover of #VC 75214, the first time in 25 years. In her report to the cold case unit, she wrote, based on DNA evidence, work records, and body discovery site, suspect Harold A. Price is identified as the likely direct cause of Laura Bennett's death. Arrest warrant approved May 4, 2000. 2 days later, at 6 a.m. on May 6, 2000, a Ventura Police task force with Bakersfield Police arrested Harold Price at his small Union Avenue home. The operation was quiet. 2 patrol cars blocked the alley, while 3 officers approached the front door. Price was roused by loud knocking. Opening the door in an old shirt and cloth pants, he heard the warrant read clearly. He didn't resist, only asking softly, "What's this about now?" before raising his hands for cuffs. During the transport to the station, Price remained silent, his eyes weary, hands trembling slightly. Now nearly 70, his hair mostly white, his face deeply lined, his sturdy build remained. After Price was detained, the search team entered his home. The rear garage, still used as an electrical repair workshop, was filled with tools, oil cans, cables, and old metal boxes. One box contained a rusted knife with a cracked plastic handle, bearing reddish-brown stains at the base. A forensic technician immediately seized and sealed it. The same box held green fabric scraps and a piece of a rubber glove. On a wooden shelf in the garage corner, they found a small notebook logging Price's electrical jobs from 1999 backward. Among the faded handwritten pages was a yellowed loose receipt for industrial gasoline, with an unclear date but listing Ventura Power Company as the supplier. All evidence was sent to Ventura for analysis. The knife went directly to Sacramento's lab, which had analyzed the Bennett case DNA. 3 days later, results returned. The blood residue on the knife matched the DNA from Laura Bennett's excavated remains. The report's bolded conclusion read, "Match confirmed, DNA profile identical." This was the second physical evidence, independent of the hair, directly tying Harold Price to the murder. While awaiting lab results, Price was interrogated at Bakersfield Police Headquarters. Ava Moreno joined two investigators. Initially, Price stayed silent, claiming he didn't know who Laura Bennett was. When Ava presented the LB bracelet photo and DNA report copy, he looked up, his gaze faltering. After a pause, he said hoarsely, "I didn't mean to. It happened too long ago." From that, the interrogation shifted. Price admitted meeting Laura on the morning of September 12, 1975, while driving on Highway 126 to check power lines. He claimed he saw her stopped on the roadside and just meant to ask if she needed help. Per his statement, a short argument ensued when she refused to talk. Price said, "I lost my temper, grabbed her arm, pulled her out of the car. She fell, her head hit the car door. I panicked." When Ava asked why he didn't call for help, Price lowered his head. "I thought she was dead. I was scared, didn't know what to do." His statement described taking Laura's body to the electrical site where he worked, attempting to hide it for good. When asked about burning and burying the body, he replied, "I didn't want anyone to find her. I used some gas left in a can." The entire interrogation was recorded. When read back his statement, Price nodded. "I don't deny it, but I didn't mean to kill her. It was an accident." Despite his claim of unintended action, the physical evidence was overwhelming. The cold case unit's final report noted DNA matches in 2 samples, work records placing the suspect at the crime scene, and subsequent actions showing intent to conceal the crime. The Ventura County Prosecutor's Office formally charged Harold A. Price with second-degree murder under Penal Code 187. On May 12, 2000, Price was transferred from Bakersfield's holding facility to Ventura for his first hearing. Stepping out of the police van, handcuffed, he bowed his head, walking silently past waiting reporters. He offered no further defense. On Ava's desk, file #VC 75214 was marked active prosecution in red ink. 25 years earlier, Harold Price was just a handwritten suspicion in Roy Halper's notes. Now, he was the official defendant in a murder case Roy once thought would never close. Harold A. Price's trial began in early September 2000 at Santa Barbara County Superior Court, chosen for its neutrality between Ventura and Bakersfield. The court allocated 2 weeks, but the case stretched nearly a month due to the volume of evidence and its unique nature. During the opening, Ventura's prosecutor, Linda Farrell, addressed the jury briefly. "This is not just a murder case, it's a story of 25 years waiting for justice." She outlined Laura Bennett, an elementary school teacher, vanished in 1975. Harold Price, an electrician, was the last seen near the scene. DNA and evidence from his former workplace now confirmed the truth. The prosecution presented for 5 consecutive days. First was the DNA evidence, the case's cornerstone. Sacramento's lab sent its lead analyst to explain the STR process, displaying large electropherogram bands showing a perfect match between the 1975 Pinto hair and Price's 1985 DNA profile. The jury watched silently. Next, Ava Moreno took the stand as an expert witness, detailing the excavation and evidence recovery at the old electrical site. She described each stage: ash layers, bone fragments, the LB bracelet, and gasoline-contaminated soil. When the bracelet was displayed in a glass case, the courtroom grew heavy. Some audience members, Laura's old classmates, bowed their heads. The prosecution continued with crime scene photos, burial pit diagrams, and gas chromatography reports, comparing gasoline samples. The chemical lab confirmed the gasoline used to burn the body matched the 1975 oil sample from Price's garage, preserved for 25 years. Finally, Ventura Power's HR records showed Price took 3 days off after the disappearance, citing an unverified funeral. The prosecutor closed her evidence with, "No one coincidentally appears at the same place, time, with matching DNA and evidence, except the perpetrator." The defense, led by Arthur Grayson, argued the DNA only proved Price's contact with the victim, not murder. They emphasized Price's age and health, claiming faded witness memories and potential evidence contamination over time. The defense argued Price's argument led to accident statement, lacked murderous intent, and body concealment was panic-driven. They requested a manslaughter charge. The prosecution countered immediately, presenting bone analysis showing strangulation marks and rib fractures, evidence of direct violence, not an accident. Farrell stated, "No one strangles someone and burns them with gasoline out of mere panic." Over 12 trial days, over 20 witnesses testified, including forensic technicians, chemical experts, and Roy Halper, the original investigator. On the stand, his voice trembled but resolute. "In 1975, we had no DNA, no ground scanners, but what I saw told me Harold Price was the last to see Laura Bennett alive." His testimony, with the physical evidence, solidified the case. On September 27, the trial reached closing arguments. The prosecution sought a second-degree murder conviction with a maximum 25-year sentence. The defense again requested leniency due to Price's age and cooperation. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. At 6 p.m., they returned. The foreman read, "We, the jury of the state of California, find the defendant Harold A. Price guilty of second-degree murder of Laura Bennett." Price showed no reaction, only lowering his head, hands clenched. Ava, seated behind, gripped her file, staring at the judge's bench. The following week, the court sentenced Harold A. Price to 25 years at Folsom State Prison, with no parole eligibility for the first 15 years. The judgment stated, "Conviction based on scientific evidence and intentional body concealment." When asked for final words, Price said softly, "I carried it in my head for 25 years. It's over now." After the trial, the prosecutor's office held a brief press conference in Ventura. Farrell stated, "The Bennett case affirms the value of preserving evidence and the persistence of the cold case team. No evidence is too old if justice still matters." Ava Moreno stood quietly behind. Roy Halper, now over 70, attended. When reporters asked his feelings, he said, "I promised myself if the day came, I'd give her name back. Today, Laura Bennett has her name in the records, no longer missing." A week later, Ava finalized the case archival. File #VC 75214, nearly 400 pages, was bound in a new hardcover, labeled Case Closed, 2000. Inside, her final note read, "Victim Laura Bennett, 1946-1975. Suspect Harold A. Price, verdict guilty, second-degree homicide. Sentenced October 3, 2000. She placed the file in Ventura's cold case storage cabinet under white light. The doors closing echoed sharply, a sound of finality. Local news reported days later, 1975 cold case solved. After 25 years, Harold Price sentenced to 25 years for killing Santa Paula teacher. The story spread statewide, hailed as one of California's longest-running cases solved by DNA. For Ava Moreno, it proved science's power and justice's persistence. For Roy Halper, it closed a debt from his career. In his final note to the cold case unit, he wrote, "Case #VC 75214, closed. Justice delayed, but not denied." 25 years after Laura Bennett vanished on Highway 126, her case was officially closed. In California's archives, among thousands of cases, the file's final status read, "Resolved. Victim identified, perpetrator convicted, 2000. After over 2 decades of silence, justice had spoken." The Laura Bennett case, from a seemingly forgotten disappearance to a resolution after 25 years, is not just a crime story, but a reflection of justice's enduring value in American society. In today's America, with advancing forensic technology, digital data, and archival systems, this case reminds us that truth may be temporarily buried, but never lost. Details like the LB embroidered handkerchief, the hair in the Pinto, or Roy Halper's note, Price, primary suspect, seemingly trivial, became the keys to bringing a perpetrator to light. In modern society, this underscores the importance of preserving data, maintaining evidence, and respecting legal processes, as every detail, no matter how small, can prove decisive as time and technology evolve. The story also speaks to perseverance and professional duty, essential qualities in any democratic society. Ava Moreno, the young technician in 2000, didn't overlook an old evidence bag, and that diligence closed a seemingly impossible case. In today's world, whether in law, science, or business, the ethos of not giving up on the small things forms the bedrock of civic trust and professional ethics. Ultimately, the Bennett case reminds every American that justice isn't confined to courtrooms, it exists in our approach to truth, in how we protect what's right, even if it takes decades to prove. Thank you for following Laura Bennett's journey to justice, a case showing that truth, however long buried, will be found. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated on more investigative stories where the past speaks and justice finds its way back.